The daughter-in-law said, "I've decided I'm selling your car. You won't need it anymore." She never imagined what I would do. I had just retired when my daughter-in-law walked in and said, "I've decided I'm selling your car. You don't need it for anything anymore." I just smiled. The next morning, my car was gone, but not for the reason she thought. I had given it away to someone who truly deserved it. That's how she was left speechless. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just returned home from the school with my final box of belongings, photos of generations of students, faded diplomas, a mug that read, "Teacher of the Year, 1998. 40 years of teaching elementary school at the Benito Juarez School was over. 40 years of waking up at 5 in the morning. 40 years of wiping noses, bandaging scraped knees, and teaching children who arrived not even knowing their own names how to read. And now, at 67 years old, my retirement had finally arrived. I was organizing my pension documents on the dining table when I heard the door open without a knock. Not a tap, not a good afternoon, nothing. Just the squeal of the hinges and the loud clatter of her heels against the tile floor. Vanessa walked into my house like someone entering conquered territory. She wore that navy blue dress she always uses when she wants to look important. Her hair was pulled back in a bun so tight it looked like it was tugging her skin. And that cold stare that I had learned to recognize over the past 3 years. That calculating stare that measures, that counts mentally what she can take. She didn't greet me. She just stood in front of me, arms crossed, one knee slightly bent, as if I were an employee who needed instructions. "Amelia," she said, using my first name without the respectful Mrs. that any respectful daughter-in-law would use, "I've decided something important. I'm selling your car. You don't need it for anything anymore. A woman your age, retired, shouldn't be driving around the city. It's dangerous. Besides, Robert and I need that money for the down payment on a bigger apartment." Just like that, without asking, without consulting, like someone deciding what to do with a piece of old furniture that's in the way. My silver Mitsuru, that 2010 model car that I bought with so much effort after saving for 2 years, giving private lessons on Saturdays and selling homemade baked goods on Sundays on the corner. That car that took me to school every morning, that transported my son when he was little, that carried groceries for families in need, that witnessed my tears when I became a widow, and also my laughter when Robert graduated. I felt a hollow in my stomach, a void that opened like a crack in an earthquake. But something strange happened. Instead of crying, instead of yelling, instead of pleading, I smiled. A small, quiet smile that must have disconcerted her, because I saw her eyebrows furrow slightly. "Did you hear me?" she asked, with that tone she uses when she thinks someone isn't understanding her orders. "I heard you perfectly, Vanessa," I replied with a calm I didn't even expect myself. "Good. I'll come for the keys tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I already have a buyer. He'll give you $85,000. It's a good price for a car that old. $85,000 that I was sure wouldn't even reach my hands." She turned around and left the same way she came in, without saying goodbye, leaving behind only the scent of her expensive perfume and the weight of her words like stones on my chest. I closed the door. I stood there, in the middle of my living room, surrounded by my retirement boxes, feeling like the walls of my own house were closing in on me. But that smile wouldn't fade, because Vanessa had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for too long. My dignity. And what she didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that I had an ace up my sleeve, a secret kept for 25 years, a card I was about to play. But they didn't know that yet. The next morning, My car would no longer be in the driveway, but not for the reasons Vanessa imagined. If you want to know how this retired teacher taught the toughest lesson to the one who tried to strip her of everything, stay until the end. And if this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel to keep sharing real-life stories that will make you feel like you are not alone in your battles. Because what came next changed everything. And I swear Vanessa never saw what was coming. I should have seen the signs when Vanessa entered our family like a storm disguised as a breeze. But a mother always wants to believe the best about the person who makes her son smile, even if that smile is fake. It was February of 2022. Robert was 42 years old, and I had given up hope of seeing him married. Not because he wasn't a good man, but because he was too good, too noble, too naive. The type of person who believes everything they are told, who never suspects others' intentions, who thinks the world is as honest as he is. I raised him alone since he was 7 years old, when his father died in a construction accident on a site in Los Angeles. We didn't receive a single dollar of compensation. Nothing. It was just him and me, an elementary school teacher with a salary of $9,000 monthly, and a boy who had just lost his dad. Those were tough years. Very tough. I remember the nights preparing packed lunches at 5 in the morning, ironing his school uniform while he slept, inventing games so he wouldn't notice that we didn't have money for toys. I remember selling homemade desserts at school, doing sewing for the neighbors, giving private lessons until 11 at night to pay for his college. Robert studied accounting, graduated with honors, and got a job at a mid-sized firm in New York. He didn't earn much, about $18,000 a month, but it was stable, responsible, a good man, just a lonely one. Until she arrived. Vanessa appeared at his office one April day, a medical insurance salesperson. 28 years old, almost 15 less than my son. Tall, thin, with that type of cold beauty that intimidates, straight hair to her shoulders, perfectly manicured nails, clothes that made it clear she knew exactly the effect she caused. Robert introduced her to me 3 weeks later. I still remember that afternoon. I prepared a pot roast, macaroni and cheese, and creamed corn. I put out my embroidered tablecloth, the one I only used for special occasions. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted her to see that my son came from a family with values, with a warm home. Vanessa arrived late, 40 minutes late. She didn't even apologize. She sat at my table, looked at the pot roast as if it were something suspicious, and said, "Oh, I don't eat much. I'm watching my figure." Robert laughed nervously. I swallowed the comment like someone swallowing glass. During that meal, Vanessa did exactly 3 things. Check her cell phone every 2 minutes, talk about how expensive everything was in New York City compared to Dallas, where she was from, and ask, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, if I had ever thought about selling my house. "Well, this area is appreciating a lot," she said, running her finger along the rim of her water glass. A property like this, even though it's small and, shall we say, traditional, could be worth about $1,200,000, maybe more. Have you never considered it, Amelia? Amelia, not Mrs. Amelia, not mother-in-law, just Amelia, as if we were friends the same age. Robert looked at her, completely captivated, as if every word that came out of her mouth were divine wisdom. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But that night, when they left, I sat in my kitchen until 2 in the morning, with a knot in my stomach that I couldn't explain. 6 months later, they were married. 6 months. Not even a decent courtship. Robert called me to give me the news, like someone announcing they bought a new car. Excited, rushed, not letting me get a word in. "Mum, Vanessa is incredible. She makes me so happy. We're getting married civilly next Saturday. Just something simple. You, her, two witnesses. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing ostentatious because they didn't have money for a wedding. Or rather, because Robert Shiva didn't have money. Because later I found out that Vanessa had debts. Lots of debts. Credit cards maxed out on designer clothes. A personal loan of $68,000 that she never paid. And a history of jobs that lasted a maximum of 6 months before she was fired or quit. But I didn't know any of that yet. The day of the wedding, I brought a red velvet cake that I made with my own hands. Vanessa didn't even try it. She said it had too many calories. And from that day on, my son began to disappear. Not physically, but in essence. The Sundays he always came to eat with me became less and less frequent. First, every 2 weeks. Then, once a month. Then, hardly ever. When I asked him, he always had the same excuse. Vanessa has plans, Mum. You know how wives are. No, I didn't know, because I was a wife, and I never pushed my husband away from his mother. The phone calls, which used to be daily, turned into short text messages. Busy, Mum. I'll call you later. But he never called, and when I finally visited them in their rented 2-bedroom apartment in Jersey City, I felt Vanessa measuring every minute of my presence, like someone counting the seconds until an unwanted guest leaves. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing Robert repeat her words like a trained parrot. Mum, don't you think you should think about moving to something smaller? Maintaining a house is a lot of work for a woman alone. Mum, Vanessa says you should be thinking about your future. Where are you going to live when you're older? Mum, is it true that you have savings? Because if so, you could help us with the down payment on a better apartment. My son, my boy, the one I raised with so much sacrifice. Now he was the echo of a woman who barely knew him. And I kept quiet. I nodded. I smiled. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I said something, if I confronted, if I complained, I would lose him forever. So I swallowed every hurtful comment, every insinuation, every contempt disguised as concern, until that Tuesday of my retirement arrived, until Vanessa crossed the line she should never have crossed. And that's when something inside me said, enough. But before everything exploded, things got much worse. Because Vanessa didn't just want my car, she wanted my entire life. It wasn't a stab, it was a slow poisoning, designed so no one would notice except me. The next 2 years after their wedding were like watching water erode stone, drop by drop, day after day. Until one day you wake up and there is nothing solid left to stand on. It all started with the loans. The first loan was 6 months after the wedding. A call from Robert, his voice heavy with shame. Mum, could you lend us $5,000? Vanessa had some unexpected medical expenses. We'll pay you back next month, I promise. $5,000. It was almost 1/3 of my bi-weekly pay. But he was my son. Of course I gave it to them. They never paid me back. 3 months later. Mum, we need $12,000 to fix Vanessa's car. The engine broke down. It's urgent, or she'll lose her job. $12,000 that I took from my emergency savings. They didn't pay that back either. Then it was $20,000 for an incredible investment opportunity Vanessa had found. A multi-level beauty product business that promised 300% returns. Mum, this is going to change our lives. In 6 months, we'll pay you back 3 times the amount. That business went bankrupt in 2 months. Vanessa never mentioned it again. And I never saw that $20,000 again. In total, during those 2 years, I lent them $73,000. $73,000 bill from a retired teacher who was earning $15,400 a month in pension. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how Vanessa started creeping into my life like poison ivy. It started with casual visits when I wasn't home. Robert had a copy of my keys forever, for emergencies. But now Vanessa used them to enter my house when I was giving private lessons or grocery shopping. I would come back and find things moved, open drawers, papers shuffled. "Oh, Amelia, we stopped by to drop this off, and I took the opportunity to look for that receipt you asked me for," Vanessa would say when I confronted her on the phone, with that sweet voice she used when she knew she had done something wrong. But I had never asked her for any receipt. She was searching, checking, investigating. Looking for what? I didn't know yet. Then the comments about my house started. "Oh, mother-in-law, don't you think this house is too big for you alone? It has 3 bedrooms. You only use one. It's a waste. This area is dangerous for an older woman living alone. Have you thought about moving to a building with security? Safer, more practical. A 1-bedroom apartment would cost you $3,000 in rent, and you could sell this house. Imagine all that money in the bank." All that money that, coincidentally, she could help me manage. Robert nodded to everything, like a puppet. Family Sundays, which were once sacred, turned into interrogations disguised as conversation. "And how much is your pension, Amelia? Do you have life insurance? In whose name is it? Have you made a will? Because you should. At your age, you never know." At my age? As if I were 90 years old. I was 65. I was healthier than 40-year-olds. But to Vanessa, I was already a useless old woman waiting to die. And Robert said nothing. Never said anything. The worst moment came one Sunday in November last year. We were eating turkey chili that I had been preparing since 6 in the morning. Robert had 2 helpings. Vanessa barely tasted it, as usual. Then, in the middle of the meal, she dropped the bomb. "Amelia, Robert and I have been thinking. We believe it would be better for you, for your well-being, to consider moving into an assisted living facility." My blood froze. "An assisted living facility?" I asked, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Yes, but not just any one. A quality one, where there are nurses, activities, people your age, where you're not alone all day. It's the best thing for you." The best thing for me? No, the best thing for her. An empty house that she could sell or rent. "Mom, it's not a bad idea," Robert murmured, without looking me in the eyes. "You'd have more company." Company. I, who had spent 40 years surrounded by children, colleagues, and parents. I, who had friends, neighbors, a life. They wanted to lock me up in a retirement home, as if I were already senile. "I'm not going to any facility," I said with a firmness that surprised me. "This is my house. I bought it with my work, and I'm staying here." Vanessa pressed her lips together. Robert lowered his gaze. They didn't bring up the subject again that day, but I knew they hadn't given up. The following days, Vanessa started a new strategy, humiliating me in public. At a family gathering at my cousin Harriet's house, Vanessa told everyone in front of me, "Oh, cousin-in-law, take good care of Amelia. You know how old people are. They forget things. The other day she left the stove on. She almost burned the house down." A lie. I had never left the stove on, but everyone looked at her with concern, and at me with pity. On another occasion at the supermarket, I ran into a former teacher colleague. Vanessa, who had accompanied me that day to help carry the bags, told her, "Mrs. Lucille, good to see you. Say, do you know a good neurologist? Amelia has been very forgetful lately. Robert and I are worried." I wasn't forgetful. My mind was clearer than ever. But Vanessa was building a narrative, painting me as a senile old woman who needed to be controlled. And worst of all, Robert didn't defend me. He never defended me. One day, I confronted him when he came alone to drop off some medications I had asked for. "Robert, why do you let Vanessa talk about me like that?" He stayed silent, looking at the floor, like when he was a boy and did something wrong. "She's not talking bad about you, Mum. She's just worried." "Worried? She's making me look like I'm losing my mind." "Don't exaggerate, Mum. Vanessa loves you very much. She just wants the best for you," he insisted. The best thing for me. That phrase again. I realized something terrible at that moment. I had lost my son. Not the physical Robert, but the Robert I knew. The noble boy, the grateful young man, the good man. That Robert had been replaced by a stranger who repeated his wife's words as if they were absolute truths. That night I cried. I cried as I hadn't cried since my husband's death, because losing a child to death is painful, but losing a child in life is unbearable. And just when I thought the pain couldn't get worse, the day of my retirement arrived. The day Vanessa decided my car was no longer mine. That was the day something inside me died, and something new, something stronger, was born. I had a secret that I kept for 25 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. That moment was about to arrive. But to understand why that secret was so important, I need to take you 25 years back, to 1999, the year I met Mr. Stephen Morfin. Mr. Stephen lived in the house next door, a single-story house with a front yard, painted pale yellow, with a purple bougainvillea climbing all over the facade. He had been a widower for 10 years, with no children, no close family, just him, his memories, and his rose bushes. He was 73 years old when we met. I was 42 and had just been widowed. We became friends by chance. One afternoon, I saw him struggling with some grocery bags, trying to open his door. I went over to help him. He invited me in for a coffee. I accepted. That cup of coffee became a ritual. Every Saturday afternoon, after doing my shopping, I would stop by his house. Mr. Stephen prepared French press coffee with a hint of cinnamon. I brought a pastry from the corner bakery. We would sit in his small living room, full of black and white photographs, and talk about everything: life, death, God, loneliness. He told me things he had never told anyone. How much he missed his wife, Hope. How much it hurt to wake up every morning in an empty bed. How the silence of a house without voices is the heaviest sound in the world. And I told him my fears. Fear of not being able to raise Robert alone. Fear of growing old without company. Fear that my life would be reduced only to working and surviving. Mr. Stephen listened to me with those wise eyes that only people who have lived a lot and suffered more have. "Amelia," he told me once, "life takes a lot from us. But if you pay attention, it also gives you signs of who deserves your trust and who doesn't. Always keep an ace up your sleeve, always." I didn't understand that phrase until years later. Over time, Mr. Stevens started needing more help. Small things at first, bringing his medications from the pharmacy, accompanying him to the doctor, doing his shopping when it rained a lot. I did it gladly, without expecting anything in return, because he reminded me of my own father, who had died when I was 23 years old. But Mr. Stephen didn't just have that yellow house in the Valley neighborhood where we lived. He had another property, one he had bought in the 1970s, when Palm Springs was still cheap and quiet. A large plot of land with a 2-story house, a garden with fruit trees, and a 3-car garage. He had bought it thinking of retiring there with his wife. But Hope died before they could move in, and Mr. Stephen never had the courage to go alone. He rented that property. $5,000 a month back then, which was enough for him to supplement his pension. The years passed. Mr. Stephen turned 80, then 83, then 85. His health worsened. Diabetes, high blood pressure, knees destroyed by arthritis. I went every day. I prepared his food, gave him his medications, bathed him when he couldn't do it alone anymore. I accompanied him to the hospital for every emergency. Robert, who was 17 years old then, also helped him. He mowed his lawn, fixed things that broke. He read the newspaper to him when Mr. Stephen couldn't see well anymore. "That boy of yours has a heart of gold, Amelia," Mr. Stephen would tell me. "You raised him well, very well." In 2009, Mr. Stephen had a heart attack. He survived, but was left very weak. One October afternoon, he called me to his house. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, the brown leather one that creaked every time he moved. He had a manila envelope in his hands. "Sit down, Amelia." I sat across from him, my heart pounding. I knew something important was coming. "I'm 90 years old. I don't have much time left. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe less." My eyes filled with tears. I had come to love him like a father. "I want you to know something. I have 2 nephews, sons of my brother, who died 20 years ago. They live in Chicago. Do you know how many times they've visited me in these 10 years? I shook my head. None. 0. They call me once a year on Christmas, just to be polite, nothing more. He opened the envelope and pulled out some papers. "This is the deed to my property in Palm Springs. It's worth approximately $3,800,000, according to the last appraisal. I also have savings, $450,000 in the bank." I froze. "Mr. Stephen, why are you telling me this?" "Because I want it to be yours. Everything. The house, the money. You have been the only real family I've had these years, you and Robert." "I can't accept that," I said immediately. "What about your nephews?" "My nephews left me to die alone. You gave me dignity in my final years. It's already decided. I went to the notary last week. Everything is in your name. Legal. Signed. Sealed." I cried. I cried so much my chest hurt. "But I want to ask you something," Mr. Stephen continued. "Don't tell anyone. No one. Not even Robert. Not yet. Wait. Observe. Life will show you who deserves to know and who doesn't. Why? Because money changes people, Amelia. It brings out the worst in them. You are good. Too good. And good people are easy prey for vultures. So keep it, as an ace up your sleeve. And when the time comes that someone treats you like trash, when someone believes you have nothing, when someone tries to strip you of your dignity, that's when you bring it out, and show them that you were always stronger than they thought." Mr. Stephen died 3 months later, in January of 2010. At his funeral, his 2 nephews showed up, dressed in suits, asking about the inheritance. The notary informed them that everything had been inherited by Amelia Sanchez. I changed your last name to a more common one in the US. They almost sued me. They said I had manipulated him, that I was an opportunist, that I had surely blackmailed him. But all the papers were in order. Mr. Stephen had even left a letter explaining his reasons. The judge dismissed the case. The nephews disappeared. I never heard from them again. And I did exactly what Mr. Stephen asked me to do. I kept the secret. I didn't tell anyone. Not my family. Not my closest friends. No one. I kept the Palm Springs house rented out. I raised the rent over the years. Now it generated $18,000 monthly that went directly into a separate bank account that no one knew about. For 25 years, that money grew. I invested it smartly. I paid off the house where I lived, which I still owed on. I saved. I kept it quiet, and I waited. I waited to see who would love me for who I was, not for what I had. Robert passed the test for years. He was a good son, grateful, affectionate, until Vanessa arrived. And then I saw my son transform into a stranger who saw me as a source of resources, as property to manage, as an obstacle to remove. Mr. Stephen was right. Money brings out the worst in people, and I had the perfect ace up my sleeve, an ace that I was about to show. Because when Vanessa walked into my house that Tuesday, demanding the keys to my car, when she treated me like a useless old woman, when she thought she could strip me of the little I had left, she made the most stupid decision of her life, because she didn't know who she was messing with, and I was ready to teach her. My retirement should have been a celebration. It became my funeral in life. It was exactly a week before the car incident, a Friday afternoon. Robert had called me that morning, with that forced, cheerful voice he used when Vanessa dictated what to say. "Mum, we want to celebrate your retirement. Vanessa is organizing a special lunch at our apartment this Sunday at 2 o'clock. Don't miss it." I should have suspected, but a part of me, that foolish part that still had hope, thought that maybe, just maybe, my son remembered who I was, what I meant, how naive I was. That Sunday, I got dressed with care. I put on my sky blue dress, the one Robert had given me 3 years ago for my birthday. I put on soft pink lipstick. I combed my grey hair, which I now wore short, at shoulder length. I wanted to look good, dignified. I brought a carrot cake that I had baked since 6 in the morning, Robert's favourite since he was a child. When I arrived at their apartment in Jersey City, I knocked on the door with my heart beating fast. Hope, mixed with fear. Robert opened it. He gave me a quick, mechanical hug. The kind of hug you give out of obligation, not love. "Come in, Mum." The apartment smelled like store-bought rotisserie chicken, not home-cooked food. Vanessa was sitting in the living room with her laptop open on the coffee table. She wore grey sweatpants and a white blouse. She hadn't even dressed up for the celebration. She didn't get up to greet me. "Hello, Amelia. Leave the cake in the kitchen." Not, "What a beautiful cake." Not, "Thanks for taking the trouble." Nothing. I left it in the kitchen and returned to the living room. I sat on the individual armchair, the farthest one from the two of them, who were together on the main sofa, as if they were judges and I was the accused. "Well, Mum," Robert began, clearing his throat nervously, "Vanessa and I want to talk to you about something important." Vanessa turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was an Excel spreadsheet. Numbers, calculations, percentages. "Amelia, we made a life plan for you, so your retirement is more comfortable and secure." A life plan, made by her, without consulting me. "What kind of plan?" I asked, feeling my stomach clench. Vanessa smiled, that shark smile she used when she thought she had total control. "Look, we analyzed your financial situation. Your pension is $15,400 monthly, correct?" I hadn't told anyone that figure. How did she know? Then I remembered. My retirement papers. The ones I was reviewing last Tuesday, when she walked in without knocking. She had seen them. She had probably photographed them. "That's correct," I replied with a cold voice. "Good. So here is the plan." She pointed to the screen. "First, we're going to sell your car. It's a 2010 Mitsuru. According to the quotes I got, we can get $85,000. It's not much, but it helps." "Wait," I interrupted. "We're going to sell? Who is we?" "You, obviously," Vanessa said impatiently, as if I were stupid. But we are going to help you with the process because you don't understand those things. I took a deep breath. I didn't say anything yet. Second point, she continued. Your pension, $15,400, is a good income for a single person, but we believe you should contribute to the family. Robert is your only son. You raised him. Well, he raised you. But now it's time to give back. To give back. As if raising a child were a business transaction. We propose that you donate 60% of your monthly pension to help us. That's $9,240. You would be left with $6,160, more than enough for your basic expenses if you live modestly. $6,000 to pay for electricity, water, gas, phone, food, medicine, unexpected expenses. And how exactly would this help me? I asked. Because you would be helping your family, Amelia, Vanessa replied with that condescending tone you use with small children. Robert and I need to save for a down payment on a bigger apartment. We want to have children soon. Your future grandchild will need space. Future grandchild. Using a baby that didn't even exist as emotional blackmail. Robert was staring at the floor. Coward. A complete coward. Third point. Vanessa printed a sheet of paper and handed it to me. We need you to sign a power of attorney. It's just for security. If something happens to you, Robert will be able to handle your legal and financial affairs without complications. A power of attorney, complete access to my house, my accounts, my documents. And what if I don't want to sign? Vanessa laughed, a fake, uncomfortable laugh. Amelia, don't be stubborn. This is for your own good. At your age, things can happen quickly. An accident, an illness. Do you want Robert to have to struggle with bureaucrats while you're in the hospital? Think logically. Logically. She talked about logic while planning to strip me of everything. And when do you need my answer? Now would be ideal. I have the appointment with the notary scheduled for Tuesday. Of course, she already had everything arranged, without asking me, without considering me. I need to think about it, I said, getting up from the armchair. Mom, sit down, Robert finally said, looking at me for the first time. We haven't eaten. I'm not hungry, but you brought cake. Leave it for Vanessa. Maybe she'll appreciate it. I took my purse and walked toward the door. Amelia, you're being very childish, Vanessa shouted behind me. We just want to help you. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I walked down the building stairs, my legs trembling. I got to my car. I sat behind the wheel. And there, in that parking lot, with the engine off and the windows closed, I broke. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, deep sobs that came from my stomach, tears that soaked my sky-blue dress, the one Robert had given me when he was still my son. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was because my son, my only son, the boy I raised alone, the one I hugged when he cried at night missing his father, the one who told me, "You're the best mom in the world," every birthday. That son saw me as an obstacle, as a source of resources, as something to manage, not as a mother, but as a burden. I drove home without remembering the way. I walked into my empty living room. I sat in my armchair. And I stayed there, in the darkness, looking at the photographs on the wall. Robert at 5 years old, in his elementary school uniform. Robert at 15, at his middle school graduation. Robert at 24, the day he graduated as an accountant. In all those photos, I was by his side, smiling, proud. At what point did I become his enemy? I picked up my phone. I almost dialed. I almost gave in. I almost told them, "It's okay. Take everything. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't abandon me." But then, My gaze fell on the photo of Mr. Stephen that I had on my small altar, next to the Virgin Mary and my husband's photo. Mr. Stephen looked at me with those wise eyes, and I remembered his words. Vultures only respect those who fly higher than them. I put down the phone. I went to my closet. From the back, behind the boxes of old shoes, I took out a metal box with a key. I opened it. There they were. All the documents. The deed to the Palm Springs property. The bank statements. The investments. The proof that I was not the vulnerable old woman Vanessa believed. I took out my cell phone and dialed a number I had saved for years. Mr. Thompson, this is Amelia Sanchez. I need to update my will. Can you see me tomorrow? Of course, Mrs. Amelia. At 11? Perfect. I hung up, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. A smile that wasn't of joy, it was of determination, because Vanessa had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for too long, my dignity. And I was about to remind everyone that Amelia Sanchez was not a victim. She was a survivor, and survivors don't give up. They fight back. That morning, I cried all the tears I had held back in 40 years of strength. It was 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Insomnia had become my most faithful companion since that disastrous lunch on Sunday. I got out of bed, put on my old cotton bathrobe, and walked barefoot to the living room. The house was in complete silence. That heavy silence that only those who live alone know. The silence that amplifies every thought, every fear, every pain. I sat on the sofa, hugging my knees to my chest like a frightened child, and looked at the photographs that filled the shelf next to the television. Robert was there, everywhere. Robert the baby wrapped in his blue blanket. Robert at 3 with his red tricycle. Robert at 7, the day his father died, clinging to my skirt with his eyes swollen from crying. I took that photo in my hands. I studied it as if I could find answers in that child frozen in time. Where was that boy now? At what point did I lose him? I remembered the day of the accident of his father, Charles, my husband for 12 years, an honest-to-the-core construction worker, the kind of man who would share his sandwich with any co-worker who didn't bring lunch. He fell from a 5th-floor scaffolding. He died instantly. The construction company didn't give us anything. They said it was his negligence, that he didn't use the harness correctly. Lies. But we were poor, without lawyers, without a voice. I was left alone with Robert, 7 years old, 1st grade. I remember that first night without Charles. Robert couldn't sleep. He climbed into my bed, crying. "Mommy, why did Daddy leave?" "He didn't leave, my love. He had to go to heaven." "Why didn't he take us?" "Because we have to stay here, but he takes care of us from above." That night I promised him something. I whispered it in his ear as I rocked him in my arms. "I promise you will never lack anything. I promise you will go to college. I promise you will have a better life than your father and I had. I promise you." And I kept it. I really did. I stretched myself into 1,000 pieces. I worked double shifts when I could. Teacher in the morning at the public school, private lessons in the afternoons. On Saturdays, I sold homemade baked goods that I prepared starting at 4 in the morning. On Sundays, I did laundry for others. Robert never knew how many times I went to bed without dinner so he could have breakfast. He never knew how many times I pawned my gold earrings, my necklace, my wedding ring to pay for his school supplies. He never knew I sold the only television we had to pay for his college entrance exam. I protected him from all that. I wanted his childhood to be as normal as possible, to not carry the burden of our poverty. And I succeeded. Robert graduated as an accountant, with honours. I was in the front row the day of his graduation, clapping until my hands hurt, my eyes flooded with pride. After the ceremony, he hugged me, tight, like when he was a child. Mum, everything I am is thanks to you. Everything. I will never forget it. I promise you. Where did that promise go? Where did that man who hugged me 20 years ago go? I wiped the tears with the back of my hand, but they kept coming, like an overflowing river, because the pain wasn't just for Robert, it was for everything, for the years of sacrifice that now seemed worthless, for the sleepless nights caring for him when he had a fever, for the times I walked in the rain because I didn't have money for the bus, for the birthdays I spent alone because I was working to give him his, for the life I didn't live because I invested it in him, and now he saw me as a burden. I picked up my phone. 3:15 in the morning. I dialed Vanessa's number. My finger trembled over the call button. I almost did it. I almost called her to tell her, "It's okay, you win. You can keep the car, the money, whatever you want. Just don't take my son away. Just let me be part of his life." Because that was what hurt the most. Not losing the money, not losing the car, losing Robert. My finger was millimeters away from pressing the button. But then my gaze shifted to the altar in the corner of the living room. There was the Virgin Mary that my mother had given me when I got married. The flickering candle projected shadows onto the photographs. The photo of Charles, my husband, with his huge smile and his calloused hands from so much work. The photo of my parents, both deceased, my mother with her floral apron, my father with his straw hat, and the photo of Mr. Stephen with his beige sweater and thick glasses, looking at me with that wisdom that only life gives. Mr. Stephen, I remembered a conversation we had shortly before his death. We were in his garden. He was watering his rose bushes. I was helping him hold the hose because his hands no longer had strength. "Amelia, do you know the difference between kindness and idiocy?" "No, Mr. Stephen." "Kindness is giving when you have. Idiocy is giving when you are being robbed. Kindness is helping the needy. Idiocy is letting yourself be used by those who only want to take advantage." "And how do you know which is which?" "When someone you claim to love treats you worse than a stranger, there is your answer." I stood up from the sofa, put away the phone, walked toward the altar, and lit a new candle. "Mr. Stephen," I whispered in the silence, "you told me to keep my ace up my sleeve. You told me to wait for the right moment. I think that moment has arrived." The silence of the house seemed to answer me, not with words, but with certainty. I returned to my room. From the closet, I took out the metal box. I opened it on my bed. Documents, proof, my true wealth, the deed to the Palm Springs house, now valued at $3,800,000. The bank statements, $492,000 saved over 25 years. The rental receipts, $18,000 monthly for the last 10 years. I took out a calculator and started adding up everything Vanessa and Robert didn't know existed. The total left me breathless. $4,292,000. I, the retired teacher who was no longer good for anything. The old woman who needed help managing her life. The woman they wanted to force a power of attorney on to control her. I had nearly $4.5 million, and they had no idea. A part of me, the weak part, still felt guilty. I still thought, but he's my son. I should share this with him. But then I remembered his eyes from Sunday. Those eyes that looked at me not as a mother, but as a commodity. I remembered how he didn't defend me when Vanessa humiliated me. I remembered the $73,000 I lent him and he never returned. I remembered every poisonous comment from Vanessa that he allowed, and something inside me hardened, like cement drying under the sun. Robert had made his decision. He chose Vanessa. He chose greed. He chose to treat me as an obstacle. Now I would make mine. I took out my address book. I looked for a name. Lupita Rodriguez. Lupita, my former student. One of the best students I had in 40 years of teaching. Brilliant, hardworking, a dreamer. Life hit her hard. At 23, she had a son, Sebastian, with cerebral palsy. The father disappeared when he learned the diagnosis. Lupita was now 28 years old. She worked cleaning houses, 5 houses daily, from 6 in the morning to 9 at night, earning $250 per house, $1,250 a day when she got 5 houses, all for Sebastian's therapies. Physical therapy 3 times a week, $1,000 per session. She didn't have a car. She took Sebastian by bus, 3 buses, an hour and a half each way, an hour and a half back, with a 5-year-old in a wheelchair. I saw her from time to time. I brought her groceries. I gave her some money when I could, but never as much as she needed. I looked at the clock, 4 in the morning. I would wait until 7 to call her. I lay down again. This time I managed to sleep 2 hours. When I woke up, it was a new day, and I was a new Amelia, one who was no longer going to ask permission to defend her dignity. While they planned to strip me, I had already moved all the pieces on the board. At 7 in the morning sharp, I dialed Lupita's number. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "Hello?" Her voice sounded tired. She was probably already awake for an hour, preparing Sebastian for the day. "Lupita, it's Mrs. Amelia." "Mrs. Sanchez?" Her voice immediately brightened. "How are you? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, my dear. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come to my house today? Around 9? There was a pause. I heard the sound of dishes clanking in the background. "Well, Mrs. Sanchez, I have 4 houses scheduled today. I can't miss work because I'll pay you for the full day, $1,200. I only need 2 hours of your time." Another pause. Longer. "Are you okay, Mrs. Sanchez? Nothing bad happened to you?" I laughed. A genuine laugh for the first time in days. "On the contrary, Lupita, something very good is going to happen to you. Trust me." "Okay, I'll be there at 9. I hung up and started getting ready. I showered. I dressed in black pants and a burgundy blouse. I tied up my hair. I put on my silver earrings that I only wore on special occasions. Today was a special occasion. I prepared coffee and a pastry. I set the table as if I were receiving someone important. Because Lupita was important, more important than Vanessa could ever be. At 9 minutes to 9, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. There was Lupita, 28 years old, but she looked 35. Hard work ages you. She wore worn jeans, old sneakers, a long-sleeved blouse with a bleach stain on the shoulder, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, no makeup, deep dark circles, but her eyes shone. They always shone. "Mrs. Sanchez." She hugged me tightly. She smelled of cheap soap and exhaustion. "Come in, my dear. Sit down." I took her to the living room. I served her coffee and a pastry. She ate like someone who hadn't had breakfast. She probably hadn't. "And Sebastian?" I asked. "With my mum. She watches him while I work." She wiped the crumbs from her lips. "Mrs. Sanchez, what do you need me for?" I sat across from her. I took her hands in mine. They were rough, cracked. Hands of a woman who works tirelessly. "Lupita, do you remember what you wrote to me in your 6th grade graduation letter?" She blushed. "Mrs. Sanchez, that was 17 years ago." "I remember. You said, 'Mrs. Amelia, you taught me that being poor doesn't mean being less, that with effort and education, I can get wherever I want. Someday I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to help children like me, and it will all be thanks to you. Lupita's eyes filled with tears. I didn't become a doctor, she whispered. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sanchez. I disappointed you. You didn't disappoint me. Life threw obstacles at you that no one should face alone, but you keep fighting. You are still that brilliant girl who never gives up, and that is worth more than 1,000 college degrees. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. What can I do for you, Mrs. Sanchez? I took a deep breath. This was important. I had to say it right. I need you to accompany me to do some paperwork. Today. And after that, I want to give you something. Give me something? Mrs. Sanchez, I can't accept anything. You already do too much for… It's my car. She froze. She looked at me as if she hadn't understood. What? My silver 2010 Mitsuru. I want to give it to you. Today. Now. For you. Lupita shook her head, tears now running freely. No, Mrs. Sanchez. I can't. It's your car. You need it. You need it more. You take Sebastian on 3 buses for his therapies. That's 4 hours of transit daily. With my car, you would do it in 40 minutes. You could work more houses, earn more, give your son better therapies. But Mrs. Sanchez… Lupita. My voice became firm. Listen to me carefully. For 40 years, I was a teacher. I taught hundreds of children. Most forgot me. Some remember me in December. They send me a Christmas message and that's it. But you have always been there. When I had pneumonia 3 years ago, you came every 3rd day to bring me soup. When I turned 65, you were the only former student who brought me a cake. Every May, you send me flowers for Teacher's Day, even though I know you don't have money even for your own expenses. She was sobbing now. It's just that you were the only one who believed in me, Mrs. Sanchez. When everyone said I was a stupid girl from a poor neighborhood, you told me I was smart. You got me the scholarship for high school. You gave me books. You taught me I was worth something. And now I want that car to teach you something else. That in this world, there are still people who give without expecting anything in return. That gratitude without self-interest still exists. That your worth does not depend on what you have, but on who you are. I hugged her as she cried on my shoulder. 30 minutes later, we were at the Department of Motor Vehicles. The process was surprisingly fast. $3,200. I paid it without blinking. In 2 hours, the car was legally in the name of Lupita Rodriguez. I handed her the keys. She took them with trembling hands. Mrs. Sanchez, I don't know how to thank you. You already thanked me, with years of genuine affection. That is more than my own family has given me. We left the building. The Mitsuru was parked outside, shining under the noon sun. Lupita circled it, touching the hood as if it wasn't real. It's mine, she whispered. It's really mine. It is yours. She got in. She adjusted the seat, the rearview mirror, put her hands on the steering wheel, and closed her eyes. I'm going to take care of it like gold, Mrs. Sanchez, I swear. And every time I drive it, I'm going to think of you. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When Sebastian is grown up, when you are doing better, when life smiles at you again, pay the favor forward to someone else. Help someone in need, just as I helped you, just as you helped take care of me. Love multiplies when it is shared. I promise, Mrs. Sanchez. I promise. She drove away slowly, carefully. I watched her leave and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. I walked back home. It was 12:30 in the afternoon. At 2 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. I opened the door. There was Vanessa, dressed in black dress pants and a white blouse, her hair down, perfect makeup. And behind her, a man in his 50s, chubby, with a t-shirt that said, "We buy cars." "Hello, Amelia. I came for the car keys." Her voice was filled with anticipated triumph. "This is Mr. Johnson. He's going to give you $85,000 in cash. No checks or transfers. Cash. 85,000 that would surely go straight into her purse. I stood calmly, serenely in the doorway. "Vanessa, would you accompany me to the driveway?" She frowned, confused by my calm tone. "What for? Just give me the keys." "Accompany me." I walked toward the side driveway of the house. She and Mr. Johnson followed me. We arrived at the spot where the Mitsuru always was. Empty. Completely empty. The silence lasted 3 seconds, then Vanessa exploded. "Where is the car?" I looked her in the eyes, without fear, without trembling. "I gave it away." Her face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, fury, panic, hatred. "I gave it away. To someone who really needed it. Someone who does deserve my generosity." "You're crazy. That car was worth $85,000. It was my car. I decided what to do with it." Mr. Johnson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mum, if there's no car, I'll be leaving." "Wait." Vanessa grabbed his arm. "She's going to get that car back. Right, Amelia?" "No. I'm going to sue you. That car was family property." I smiled. That smile that was now my weapon. "It was never family property, Vanessa. It was my private property. And what is mine, I do with as I please. Without your permission. Without anyone's permission." She pulled out her phone and frantically dialed. "Robert, your mum gave the car away. Yes, she gave it away. Get over here right now." She hung up and looked at me with a hatred she no longer bothered to hide. "This isn't going to end here, you useless old woman." And it was at that moment that I knew the mask had fallen forever. The real monster had just come out into the light. I saw the real monster there, without disguises, without smiles, just greed and hatred. Mr. Johnson left, stammering apologies. Vanessa and I stood in the empty driveway, looking at each other like 2 gladiators in the arena. "I'm going inside my house," I said calmly. "You can leave or stay outside, but you're not coming in." "Of course I'm coming in. I'm going to wait until Robert gets here." I closed the door in her face. I heard her screaming on the other side. Words I never thought anyone would say to me. Insults a daughter-in-law should never say to her mother-in-law. But I didn't care anymore. I sat in my living room. I poured a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking. My heart was beating steadily. It was strange. After months of fear, of doubts, of wanting to please everyone, now I only felt clarity. 20 minutes later, I heard Robert's car pulling up outside, his door slamming. Altered voices. Vanessa crying, yelling, explaining. Then the banging on my door. "Mom, open up!" I got up slowly. I opened the door. Robert looked distraught, sweaty. He had rushed out of work. He still had his ID badge hanging from his neck. Vanessa was behind him, with red eyes, smeared makeup, disheveled hair. She no longer looked like the perfectly groomed woman. She looked like what she was, a desperate woman who had just lost $85,000. "Mom, what did you do?" Robert's voice trembled between confusion and anger. "I gave my car away." "To whom?" To Lupita Rodriguez. Do you remember her? My former student. The one with the son with cerebral palsy. That car was worth money, Vanessa screamed from behind. It was my money, I replied without getting agitated. You have no right. Vanessa tried to enter, but Robert stopped her with his arm. Mom. Robert took a deep breath, trying to calm down. We needed that car. Vanessa and I had plans. You have a lot of plans with what is mine, Robert, but you never ask me. Because you're our family. Family is supposed to help each other. Helping is different from taking. No one is taking anything from you. Vanessa managed to push Robert and enter my house. You're ungrateful. Robert supported you your whole life, and this is how you repay him. I laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. Robert supported me. Is that what you told her, Vanessa? It's the truth. I turned toward my son. I looked him straight in the eyes. Robert Sanchez, look me in the eyes and tell me, did you ever support me? He lowered his gaze. That gave me the answer. I'm going to refresh your memory, my voice rising in volume for the first time. I supported you since you were 7 years old. I worked double shifts. I sold baked goods. I did other people's laundry. I went to bed without dinner so you could eat. I sold my television to pay for your college exam. I paid for your entire college education. And when you graduated, when you started working, the only thing I asked was that you visit me on Sundays. Nothing else. Not a single dollar. Just your time. Robert swallowed. Mom, And then she arrived. I pointed to Vanessa. And Sundays became every 2 weeks, then monthly, then hardly ever. And when you did come, it was to ask me for money. 5,000, 12,000, 20,000, $73,000 in 2 years, Robert. How much of that have you paid back to me? Silence. 0. Nothing. And even so, I never complained. Because you were my son. Because I thought you needed it. We did need it, Vanessa screamed. Shut up, I said with a coldness that made her step back. You are not part of this conversation. This is between my son and me. I'm his wife. You're a parasite. Vanessa lunged toward me. Robert stopped her just in time. Let me go. This old woman needs someone to tell her the truth. My truths? I walked up to her fearlessly. You want truths, Vanessa? I'm going to give you truths. I know that when Robert met you, you had $68,000 in credit card debt. I know you were fired from 3 jobs in 2 years. I know that the beauty business I put $20,000 of my savings into was a pyramid scheme that you knew was going to fail. How? Her face paled. Because I'm not the idiotic old woman you think. Because I hired a private investigator 6 months ago, when you started insinuating the power of attorney, because something in my intuition told me something was rotten, and I was right. I took a folder from my bookshelf. I opened it in front of them. Photos, documents, bank statements. These are your current debts, Vanessa. $122,000. What have you been paying with Robert's salary while you spend money on clothes, salons, and expensive restaurants with your friends? Robert took the folder. His hands trembled as he flipped through the papers. Vanessa, is this real? I can explain. And this? Robert pointed to another photo. Who is this man? It was a photo of Vanessa in a cafe, holding hands with a man around 35 years old. He's my cousin. Your cousin lives in Dallas, Vanessa. You said so yourself. This man is David Miller, a bank manager, married, 2 children, and your lover for the last 8 months. The silence was absolute. Robert dropped the folder. He looked at her as if he had never seen her before. Are you cheating on me? No. That photo is taken out of context. Your mother is lying. The investigator has 23 more photos and videos in hotels, in his car, in apartments he rents by the hour. Vanessa looked at me with a hatred so pure I could almost touch it. Why? Robert whispered, his voice broken. Why did you marry me if you didn't love me? Vanessa didn't answer. I answered for her. Because she thought you were a fool with a mother who had money. She thought I had properties, savings, inheritances. She thought if she married you, she could manipulate you into getting everything from me. That's why the constant visits. That's why searching my drawers. That's why the power of attorney. That's why she wanted to sell me, institutionalize me, make me disappear. Lies! Vanessa was hysterical now. It's all lies from this resentful old woman. Resentful? I would be resentful if I had stayed silent, if I had signed your power, if I had let you lock me up in an assisted living facility while you kept my house. But I'm not resentful, Vanessa. I'm smart, something you never were. She lunged at me again. This time, Robert couldn't stop her in time. She pushed me. I fell onto the sofa. Go to hell, you bitter old woman. This is all your fault. If you weren't so selfish, if you had given us what we asked for, none of this would have happened. Robert grabbed her arms and pulled her back. Get out of here. Get out of my mother's house. Let me go. I said get out. He literally dragged her to the door. She was screaming, crying, kicking. Robert, don't do this to me. I love you. She's lying to you. She wants to separate us. He pushed her out into the street and closed the door. Vanessa banged on it from the outside, shouting obscenities, threatening, crying. Robert leaned against the door, breathing heavily, his eyes full of tears. And then he collapsed. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, his back against the door, his head in his hands. And he cried as he hadn't cried since he was a child. I'm sorry, Mum, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. What did I do? What did I do? I sat on the floor next to him. I placed my hand on his back, and for the first time in months, I felt like my son had returned. But the pain was only beginning to heal, and the revelations were not over yet. It was then that I took out the manila envelope that had been waiting for 3 years. Robert was still on the floor, sobbing with his face in his hands. Outside, Vanessa had stopped screaming. I heard her car starting, the tires screeching against the pavement as she sped away. I got up slowly. My knees protested. 67 years weigh heavily when you carry so much pain. Robert, get up. Come to the table. He looked at me with swollen red eyes. He looked like a lost child. Mum, I ruined everything. Everything. Get up. He obeyed automatically. He sat in the dining chair, hunched over, defeated. I sat across from him. I placed the manila envelope on the table. That yellowish envelope that I had kept in my closet for years. The one that contained my truth, my secret, my ace up my sleeve. Before we talk about your marriage, about Vanessa, about what you're going to do now, I need to show you something. What is that? Your inheritance, or what was going to be your inheritance. He frowned, confused. I opened the envelope. I took out the documents one by one, placing them in front of him like poker cards on the table. First, the deed to the Palm Springs property. Robert took it. He read. His eyes widened. Is this a house? A 2-story house with a garden, 2,000 square meters of land in a private area of Palm Springs, valued at $3,800,000. Whose is it? Mine. The paper trembled in his hands. Since when? Since 2009, 25 years ago. 25 years. And you never told me? No. Why? I took a deep breath. This was the difficult part. Because Mr. Stephen, my neighbor, the gentleman you helped when you were a teenager, bequeathed it to me before he died, along with savings. He asked me not to tell anyone, to wait, to observe who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. I took out the second document, the bank statements, $492,000 in savings, plus what the rent from that property generates. $18,000 monthly for the last 10 years. Money that I invested, that I saved, that I multiplied. Robert looked at the papers as if they were written in another language. Mum, you have $4,292,000 in total. Yes. He put his hands to his head. He closed his eyes. It can't be. It can't be. I took out the third document, the one that hurt the most to show. This is my will, the one I made a year ago, shortly after you married Vanessa. I slid it toward him. He read it in silence. His lips moved, forming the words without sound. He finished reading. He looked at me with fresh tears in his eyes. You left me. Everything. 100%. The Palm Springs house, the savings, this house. Everything. For you, my only son. Mum. But something started to change. You started to change. The visits became less frequent, the loans more constant, Vanessa more aggressive. And I started to doubt. Doubt what? Whether you really loved me, or if you were just waiting for me to die to inherit. No, Mum. No, I never. Let me finish. I raised my hand. Then I made a decision 3 months ago. I went to the notary again. I took out the fourth document, the new will, dated just 2 months ago. This is my updated will, signed on August 15th, 2024. I handed it to him. I watched as his face went from shock to absolute horror. Only 30%? Only 30% for you? The 70% remainder is divided among 3 of my former students. Lupita Rodriguez, to whom I gave the car this morning. Marcela Olson, who takes care of me when I'm sick. And Rosario Telles, who visits me every Sunday to play dominoes and chat. But Mum, I'm your son. And they are the ones who treat me like a human being. The ones who call me to ask how I am without wanting anything in return. The ones who hug me with genuine affection, not with interest. I love you, Mum. I love you. Love me now that I'm alive, Robert, not when I'm dead. He broke down again. He cried with deep, heartbreaking sobs. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I was an idiot. A complete idiot. I let Vanessa poison me. I let her manipulate me. I failed you. I failed the only person who was always there for me. I got up. I circled the table. I knelt beside him, ignoring the pain in my knees. I took his face in my hands, as I did when he was a child, and needed me to look him in the eyes. Robert, look at me. He opened his eyes, those eyes that were identical to his father's. I forgive you. Really? Really, because you are my son, because I love you, because I know that the Robert I raised is still there, buried under Vanessa's lies. But what? Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. Forgiving doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. Forgiving means I'm not going to carry the resentment. But trust, that has to be rebuilt. And it takes time. The time you need, Mum. The time you need. And that will is not going to change. Not for now. I need to see actions, not words. I need to see that you truly understood the lesson. He nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. And Vanessa? Vanessa is your problem, not mine. You decide what to do with your marriage. But I'm going to tell you something. A woman who cheats on you, who uses you, who manipulates your mother, that woman doesn't love you. She never loved you. I know. Now I know. He stayed sitting there, looking at the documents scattered on the table. My entire financial life exposed. All my secrets revealed. For years I thought you were a poor teacher who was barely surviving on her pension, he finally said, his voice hollow. And it turns out you're a multimillionaire. I'm not a multimillionaire, Robert. I'm a woman who learned to be cautious, who learned that money gives options, but it doesn't give love, who learned that sometimes you have to keep secrets to protect yourself. From your own family, from anyone who sees you as a resource, not as a person. A long silence, only the tick-tock of the wall clock. What do I do now, Mum? Now you go home. You think things through. You decide whether you want to stay with Vanessa or not. And you start building your own life, without depending on me, without expecting my money. Just you. Will you let me see you? Whenever you want, but with rules. You call before you come. You don't bring Vanessa unless I authorize it, which won't happen soon. And you come because you want to see me, not because you need something. I accept everything, whatever it takes. He stood up. I did too. We hugged. A long, tight hug, the kind that says everything words cannot. I love you, Mum. I really love you. And are you, my boy? Always. He left with his shoulders slumped, defeated but aware. I watched his car drive away through the window. I sat in my favorite armchair. Silence, my house, empty, quiet. For the first time in years, that silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. I picked up my phone and called Lupita. Mrs. Sanchez, how is the car? Mrs. Sanchez, you won't believe it. Sebastian is so happy. He cried with excitement. We made the trip to therapy in 35 minutes. 35. What used to take us 3 hours? I smiled, a genuine, warm smile. I'm so glad, my dear. Mrs. Sanchez, are you okay? You sound different. I'm perfect, Lupita. For the first time in a long time, I'm perfect. I hung up. I looked at the altar. Mr. Stephen looked at me from his photograph. You were right, old friend. Vultures only respect those who fly higher than them. And today I flew. That night I slept 9 hours straight. No nightmares, no insomnia, just peace. Because I had recovered something more valuable than $4 million. I had recovered my dignity. And no one, ever again, was going to take it away from me. I didn't seek revenge. I sought to teach them what they never learned, the value of respect. 2 weeks passed since that day. 2 weeks of absolute silence from Vanessa. 2 weeks of daily calls from Robert. At first awkward, nervous, then increasingly genuine. Good morning, Mum. How did you wake up? Have you had breakfast? Do you need me to get you anything from the grocery store? I remembered today as the anniversary of Dad's death. I'm going to take flowers to the cemetery. Do you want to come with me? Small gestures, genuine attempts to reconnect. I responded cautiously. With affection, yes, but with clear boundaries. Good morning, son. I'm fine. I've already had breakfast, thank you. But you can come have coffee if you want. Yes, come with me, but come alone. And he came alone. The Robert who came to my door was no longer the hunched, manipulated man who repeated other people's words. He was someone more awake, more conscious, still hurt, but fighting to return. One October afternoon, he arrived with a bag of groceries. I brought you the vanilla wafers you like, and coffee. Thank you, son. I made coffee. We sat at the dining table like before, like when things were simple. Mum, I need to tell you something. My heart tightened. Here it comes. Tell me. I'm divorcing Vanessa. I've already talked to a lawyer. It's an at-fault divorce, proven adultery. I have the photos you gave me, and the investigator gave me more evidence, videos, messages, everything. How do you feel? He gave a bitter laugh. Like an idiot. Like the most stupid man on the planet. I was married for 3 years to someone who never loved me, who only used me, and I was happy, believing I was loved. You're not an idiot. You were naive. There's a difference. What is the difference? Idiots don't learn. Naive people do. He took his coffee. His hands trembled slightly. Vanessa tried to contact me. She sent me about 100 messages, crying, saying it was all lies, that you made up the photos, that this David is just a friend, that I'm the love of her life. And what did you tell her? Nothing. I blocked her everywhere. Phone, text message, social media, everything. I never want to hear from her again. And did she accept that? No. She came to my job. She made a scene, crying in front of all my colleagues, saying I was abandoning her for no reason, that my mum had brainwashed me. I sighed. I'm sorry, son. Don't apologize. She dug her own grave. Security escorted her out of the building. My boss called me to his office. I explained the situation. He was understanding, but he said if she comes back, he'll have to call the police. Silence. I also found out more things, Robert continued. His voice was increasingly broken. This David isn't the only one. There was another man before, and another before that. Vanessa has a pattern. She looks for men with some money. She marries or moves in with them. She squeezes them until they have nothing left, and then she moves on to the next one. How did you find out? The investigator kept digging. He found her ex-boyfriend in Dallas, an accountant like me. She did the same thing to him. She left him with $200,000 in debt. The poor guy is still paying off cards she used. I got up. I circled the table. I hugged my son from behind. I'm so sorry, Robert. Me too, Mum. I'm sorry I exposed you to that. I'm sorry I brought that snake into our family. It's over now. Do you really forgive me? I already told you. I forgive you, but trust takes time. He nodded against my shoulder. 3 weeks later, a Saturday morning, someone knocked on my door. I opened it. Vanessa. But not the groomed, perfect, controlled Vanessa. This was a different woman. Unwashed hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, deep dark circles, dirty jeans, old sweatshirt. Amelia, what do you want? To talk, please. Just 5 minutes. Everything in me said to close the door, but something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the need for closure, made me take a step back. 5 minutes. At the entrance. You don't come in. She stood in the doorway, looking at the floor. I came to ask for your forgiveness. I don't believe you. It's the truth. I know I messed up. I know I ruined everything. I know I never should have treated you the way I did. Did you just come to tell me that? I came to ask you to talk to Robert, to tell him to give me another chance, that I've changed, that I... And there it was, the real reason. I'm not going to do that, Vanessa. Please, he listens to you. If you tell him to forgive me, he will. Exactly, he listens to me. That's why I'm not going to ask him to do something that will destroy him again. I love him. No, you love what he represents. Stability. A fool who is easy to manipulate. Access to me. To my money. That's not love. That's not true. Then why did you cheat on him? Why did you use him? Why was every conversation you had with me about getting something from me? Silence. She had no answer. Vanessa, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen well. My son deserves someone who truly loves him, someone who values him, someone who doesn't see him as a means to get money. You were never that person, and you never will be. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. And there it was, the real monster again. My son wasn't happy with you. He was your prisoner. He chose me, not you, and now he's unchoosing you. Live with that. I closed the door. She screamed on the other side. Poisonous words, empty threats. This isn't going to end here. You'll regret this. You're a... I didn't listen anymore. I turned up the radio. 10 minutes later, she left. She never came back. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. December of 2024. Robert didn't give her a single dollar. She had no grounds to fight. The adultery was proven. The last I heard of her, she had moved to Boston. With another man, another accountant, another naive man. Some people never learn. But that was no longer my problem. My problem was rebuilding my relationship with my son. And slowly, visit after visit, coffee after coffee, we started. Robert started coming every Sunday again, alone, without asking for anything, just to talk. He told me about his work, his plans, how he was learning to live alone. It's weird, Mom. I never really lived alone. I went straight from your house to Vanessa's. Now I have to learn to cook, to do my laundry, to fill my own loneliness. That's good. You need to get to know yourself. Do you think I can ever trust anyone again? Yes. But first, learn to trust yourself, your instincts, your worth. 1 January of 2025 afternoon, he arrived with something in his hands. A white envelope. What is that? Open it. Inside was a check for $73,000. Robert, it's everything I lent you. Well, that you lent me. With interest. It took me 4 months to save. I stopped eating out. I sold things I didn't need. I worked extra jobs. But here it is. Full amount. My eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Because when you borrow, you return it. That's what you taught me. And I had forgotten. I hugged him. Tight. I'm proud of you. I don't deserve it yet. But I'm going to deserve it. I promise you. And he kept his promise. The following months, Robert transformed. Slowly. But surely. He started therapy. He learned about toxic relationships, about codependency, about boundaries. He started to become the man I always knew he could be. And I, slowly, loosened the boundaries, trusting more, believing again. The will remained the same. 30% for him, 70% for my former students. But it was no longer a punishment. It was a reminder that love is shown through actions, not words. That family is not just blood. It's those who are with you through thick and thin. One April afternoon, while I was drinking coffee in my yard, Robert asked me, "Are you ever going to change the will?" I don't know. Does that bother you? No, well, a little. I'm human. But I also understand why you did it. And I understand that Lupita, Marcella, and Rosario deserve it as much or more than I do. Robert, what matters is not what you have when I die. What matters is that you have me while I'm alive. He smiled, a genuine, clear smile. You're right, as always. Not always, but in this, yes. Sundays became sacred again. Robert came. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes we cooked together. We always talked. About everything. About nothing. About life. Like before. Like it should have always been. If this story teaches you anything, let it be this. Never allow your worth to be stolen by the fear of being alone. 8 months have passed since that Tuesday when Vanessa walked into my house demanding the keys to my car. 8 months that feel like an entire lifetime. I am sitting in my garden. It is 4 in the afternoon on a Saturday in June. The sun is gently warming me. I have a cup of coffee in my hands and a light blanket over my legs, even though it's not cold. I just like to feel wrapped up. I look at the empty space where my silver Mitsuru used to be, and I smile. Because I didn't lose a car that day, I won my dignity back. Life after the storm has been different, calmer, clearer. Like when a dirty window is cleaned and you can suddenly see the whole landscape. Robert comes every Sunday without fail, sometimes during the week too. He no longer carries burdens on his shoulders. He no longer repeats other people's words. He is himself again. Or maybe he is himself for the first time in his life. He divorced Vanessa in February. The process was faster than we expected. She didn't fight much. I suppose she understood it was pointless. Or she simply found her next victim. My son lives alone now in a small one-bedroom apartment in Jersey City. He cooks his own meals. He does his laundry. He pays his bills. He is learning to be a whole man, not half of someone else. Mum, he told me 2 weeks ago while we were washing dishes together after lunch. I think I was never truly an adult until now. I always depended on someone. On you. Then on Vanessa. I never learned to be alone. And how does it feel? Terrifying, but also liberating. I hugged him with my soapy wet hands and everything. The will is still the same. 30% for Robert. 70% divided among Lupita, Marcella, and Rosario. And do you know something? That decision doesn't hurt me anymore, because those 3 women have shown me more love in these 8 months than many people have in their entire lives. Lupita comes every 2 weeks. She brings Sebastian, who now walks a little better thanks to the constant therapies she can afford because she no longer wastes 4 hours a day on public transit. He is 6 years old. He calls me Grandma Amelia. Every time he does, my heart fills up. The car is still running perfectly. Lupita takes care of it like a treasure. She washes it every week. She gets its service done religiously. She says that car changed her life. And I know it's true. Marcella, another former student, works as a nurse. She comes to check my blood pressure every week. She never charges me. She says it's the least she can do for the teacher who paid for her high school uniform when her family didn't have money to eat. Rosario is the youngest, 25 years old. She studies law at the public university. She works part-time and studies part-time. She comes every Sunday afternoon after Robert leaves, and we play dominoes until 8 at night. We talk about everything. Her dreams, her fears, her disastrous boyfriends, for whom I give advice she never follows. She makes me laugh like no one else. These 3 women are my family, not because they share my blood, but because they shared my life when no one else wanted to. The Palm Springs house is still rented out. $18,000 monthly that I now use differently. Scholarships for former students who lack resources. Groceries for needy families. Medications for elderly neighbors who don't have a pension. Mr. Stephen gave me that money to protect me. Now I use it to protect others. I think he would be proud. Sometimes I look at his photograph on my altar and talk to him as if he were there, listening to me. You were right, old friend, about everything. Money does bring out things in people, but it also brings out the best when you use it well. You taught me to fly higher than the vultures, and I did. My pension of $15,400 monthly is perfectly sufficient. I live alone, without luxuries, but without deprivation, as I have always lived. The difference is that now no one tells me what to do with my money. No one tells me how to live my life. No one treats me like a burden, and that is priceless. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had given in that day, if I had given the car keys to Vanessa, if I had signed the power of attorney, if I had donated 60% of my pension. I would be living on $6,000 a month, probably in a cheap assisted living facility, without a car, without autonomy, without dignity. Robert would still be married to Vanessa, being her puppet, being unhappy without knowing it, and I would be dying in life. But I didn't give in. I smiled that day, and that smile changed everything, because the smile was not of defeat, it was of strategy, of power, of someone who had an ace up her sleeve and was ready to use it. Now, sitting in my garden, drinking my coffee, feeling the sun on my face, I realize something. I am 67 years old. Statistically, I have maybe 15 or 20 good years of life left. Maybe less. Maybe more. No one knows. But what I do know is this. I am going to live those years surrounded by those who value me, not those who calculate me. I am going to live free, independent, the owner of my decisions. I am going to die with dignity, not as a victim, but as a survivor. And if this story I told you serves any purpose, if there is anything you can take from these words, it is this. Never ever let anyone make you feel less than you are worth. It doesn't matter if it's your son, your daughter-in-law, your husband, your family, whoever. If someone treats you as an obstacle, as a burden, as a resource, walk away. Because staying out of fear of loneliness is dying in life. And believe me, loneliness is better company than people who despise you. Learn to keep your aces up your sleeve. You don't have to show everything you have, everything you know, everything you are worth. Wait. Observe. And when the right moment arrives, when someone thinks they can strip you, that's when you show your true power. Robert has changed. He truly has changed. I see it in his eyes, in his actions, in how he talks to me now. Will I change the will someday? Maybe, maybe not. What matters, Guy, is that he now understands that my love is not measured in dollars, that my worth as a mother does not depend on how much I bequeath him, that I am not a bank, I am his mother. And mothers deserve respect. Always. I finish my coffee. The sun is starting to set. Soon it will be time to make dinner. Tomorrow is Sunday. Robert will come at 2 o'clock, as always. He will bring rotisserie chicken and tortillas. I will make rice and beans. We will eat together. We will talk. We will laugh. Like a real family. And in the afternoon, Rosario will arrive with her dominoes and her college stories. My house will be filled with voices, with laughter, with life. Not with greed, not with manipulation, not with pain, but with genuine love. And that is the only thing that truly matters in the end. I get up from my chair. I pick up the empty cup. I look one last time at the space where my car was. Thank you, Mitsuru, I whisper to the wind. You were more than a car. You were my instrument of justice. My way of recovering what they tried to take from me. My dignity. I walk into my house, close the door, and feel peace. Deep, complete peace. The kind only known by those who fought for it and won it. I am 67 years old. My name is Emilia Sanchez. I was a teacher for 40 years, and I taught hundreds of children to read, to add, to respect. But the most important lesson I gave was the last one. The one I gave my son and his manipulative wife. The lesson that dignity is not negotiated, not sold, not given away. It is defended. With smiles, with strategy, with aces up your sleeve, and with the courage to say, enough. If my story touched your heart, if it made you feel something, I ask you to leave your comment below. Tell me, did you ever have to defend your dignity? Did you ever set boundaries with someone you thought you loved? You are not alone in this fight. There are thousands of us who have gone through this, and we all deserve respect. Like this video if you believe that mothers, grandmothers, older women deserve to be treated with dignity, not as burdens. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this, stories that remind you that it's never too late to reclaim your power. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching me from? What country? What city are you accompanying me from right now? Because even if you are on the other side of the screen, I want you to know something. You are not alone. I am with you. And your dignity is worth more than all the gold in the world.